I'm not gonna be long here. Actually, oh no, I have to wait. I have to be oh, wait. But this is the word that God got on my head this morning. I'm gonna share it with you. Um, I'm gonna get right into it. So, whenever the glory of God, whenever the glory of God comes, or whenever you're in a platform for the glory of God, I don't want to use the word sin, but I feel like that word is more appropriate, or sacrifice. There's some type of sacrifice that has to happen. Um, and it's not in a sense of demonic. Like, we already have the sacrifice of Jesus, right? What Jesus did on the cross was enough. That has earned the entryway into the so we can go boldly before the throne. So we can enter into the gift of salvation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking specifically about glory. Now, the word of God says that we go from glory to glory. The word of God says that we go from glory to glory. Okay? And it says the greatest of all in the kingdom of heaven are those that serve. Are servants. And servants are what? People that help other people. Or people that, you know, help the kingdom. Right? So there's a sacrifice that happens. Um, and this is the term you hear that okay, look, the favor of the Lord is not fair or something like that, right? And sometimes that can be misunderstood with the glory of God. The glory requires sacrifice of some sort. The glory is not the glory of God. The glory of God. The glory of God is not free. So a lot of times, so a lot of times, the glory of God requires some type of sacrifice. Let me give you a biblical example. Think about Job. Job, before he received his double portion, he went through a season of testing, of trial, of all these different things. Job went through all of these trials and tribulations. He lost pretty much everything. And all of that was fertilizer for the double portion that God was getting ready to put upon his life. Look at Jesus. He was beaten, he was bruised, he went through all this suffering, and he was glorified in heaven. He was glorified. He was put at the right hand side of the Father, which is of great honor in the heaven. What's another example? David. David went through a lot of warfare. David went through a lot of suffering. I'm not here to promote statistics though. I'm not talking about unnecessary suffering. I'm talking about the suffering that God always promised. He said if Jesus himself had to suffer, then how are we any different? If Jesus himself, who knew no sin, who was perfect in everything he done, never messed up not once, had to suffer, then we also share in the suffering. But here's the kicker. If we share in the suffering, we also share in the reward. That's what the word of God says. If we share in the suffering with Christ, we also share in his reward. There's levels of glory. So a lot of times when people see people that are blessed or people that are, it's not always that the person is witchcraft or a person is just no. The person is following Christ. Sometimes it's because they're dealing with suffering. A lot of times people see the glory, but they did not see the sacrifice of suffering. over after that. Jesus was handed over and was crucified. So a lot of times, the suffering, the sacrifice, the burden, it begins to build this fertilized ground for glory. Glory has to be fertilized. You don't get glory without suffering. You don't get glory without burden. You don't get glory without going through the process. And why does God have? And it's not that God is doing it because He enjoys watching people suffer. He's not satanic in nature. That's satanic. That's what you see in the demonic kingdom. It's not suffering is not to be enjoyed, right? Long suffering is a fruit of the spirit, by the way. So it's a character, it's an attribute of God. And thank God that He has long suffering. Because if He had not, I don't know if any of us would. But glory has to be fertilized. The glory of God has to be fertilized. That's why we have praise and worship. And you notice a lot of times worship people that worship go through a lot of things. Why? Because that suffering fertilizes the ground for true worship, for a heart of codependence, of humility. That's why worship is like, oh my God, I always feel like I'm going through something right before I gotta perform, or right before I gotta do something, or right before I gotta do something in church. You know why? Because God is allowing you to be fertilized. So when Sunday comes, the glory comes out. Not you, not what you've been through, but the glory of God. Because the entire week you was going through all that warfare. You was fighting all this stuff, and now boom, Sunday's here. And then what comes out? The glory of it. So glory, like I was saying, glory is not necessarily in the sense of God enjoys watching you suffer. No, 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 no. God is creating a ground, a fertile ground for His glory. Good morning. God is creating fertile ground for His glory. You can't just throw a seed into the ground and hope, oh, I hope it grows. Or I hope if I throw this seed into the ground, I surely hope that it sprouts something. Maybe on some occasions that is true. But there comes a time when you want a great reward, you're going to have to put in a you're gonna have to put in a little bit of work. You can't do what you do for wildflowers, what you do for a apple tree or a mango tree. Because mango tree you have to cut it open. Get the actual seed, take the actual seed coating off. You have to dig a certain amount of inches, and then you have to rake up anything that will take nutrients from that tree and then plant it. Where wildflowers, the seed, if you just throw the seed anywhere, it'll probably plant anywhere. So you don't so we don't get to participate in glory until there's first been a sacrifice, until there's first been some type of suffering. Now granted, it doesn't always mean that it has to be real suffering. Let me explain. David suffered a lot, so Solomon could enjoy glory. Y'all don't. That's not what y'all want to hear. Sometimes you may suffer, but your children won't do it. Legacy. It says in the Word of God that a righteous man leaves a legacy to his children, or he leaves an inheritance. Inheritance doesn't just mean money. Inheritance means spiritual things too. David left a spiritual inheritance. He left money and wealth. Don't get me wrong. He left a physical wealth, right? David was a rich king. He was not. David was not broke by any means. David had money. He had money. Okay, but David also left a spiritual inheritance to his son, which made Solomon one of the wisest men. One of the wisest men. He was one of the wisest men. or it might just be someone else, right? Because Van Gogh, perfect example. Van Gogh, his paintings did not sell when he was alive. His paintings, Van Gogh's paintings did not sell when he was alive. But years after he died, people saw the glory in what he painted. They saw the emotion. They saw the glory in what he painted. Now people are enjoying what Van Gogh had accomplished. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen during the time of living. It was appreciated more. The same thing for artists that pass away. They all of a sudden they start selling out when they are gone, right? That's why a lot of times when artists pass away, you start seeing record labels do all this promo and all this stuff to start selling records stuff. And it does really good because people want to know about the other side of the story. That's not always the case. A lot of times the suffering, the burden, whatever the death, whatever happens, it builds fertilizer for whatever God is getting ready to bring in and plant in your life. Because now the ground is fertile. Now the ground has went through the bumps, the bruises, and now it is ready for fresh seed. The ground is raked up. If a ground could respond to pain, when you're raking up farmland, they would say ouch. Because you're tearing through the different levels of soil. The ground would say ow, that hurts. But thank God the ground doesn't have nerves. They have and it would say ouch because it's being raked up, the fertilizer process doesn't always feel good. The fertilizer process doesn't always feel good. The fertilizer because you have to put cow manure, horse manure. But when you see the plant, the reward, when you see the reward, when you see the fruit that's produced, the glory that's produced, when you see the glory that's produced, it makes it all worth it. That's why it talks about how women have children. A woman giving birth to a child, she doesn't remember the pain of the pushing of the birthing. She doesn't remember the pain of it. Why? Because she gets to see the glory. After all that pain, now you have this new life with you. This new life, this beautiful little baby. And you just look at it like I forgot. I forgot this even hurt. You know why? That's why people keep having more and more children after the first. I'll never do this again. I'll never do it again. And you are pregnant again because it's a beautiful thing. There's a glory about it. There's a glory about it, even though it was a little painful. Not a lot, not a little, a lot. There's nothing I'm saying that's not in the word. That's why Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. That's why Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new. But I want to get off here. God bless y'all.